Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all veterinarians across the longitudes. We are here in the. It's dark outside as I'm here in Kolkata, the eastern part of India. Western part is slowly going towards evening. Middle East maybe mid in the afternoon, and there's Dr. Lech in the US.
I'm on video now. I'm on video.
Who just woke up a few hours back, I think. So welcome to this lecture series. What we're trying to do here is to take you through the different things that veterinarians have been doing. This is a group of veterinarians who, not all of them treat small animals. There are lots of people doing different kinds of stuff all across the world. And without wasting much time, we'll go deep into the topic. I just want to give you one line of introduction to Dr. Lech, and he will probably introduce himself better than I will. Probably he was born and raised in Poland and now lives in the United States. He works with the USDA APHIS Veterinary Service as a veterinary medical officer. And I would hand over the screen to you, sir, to take us through the presentation that you've made for us this evening.
Thank you, Miriam. Okay, so good morning or good evening, whatever you are. Thank you again for inviting me to your meeting. I think the whole idea of sharing our experience, not only strictly about animal diseases, but also about other aspects of us being veterinarian responsible for working with animal diseases is very important. And thank you for the introduction. Yes, I work for the USDA Animal Veterinary Medical Officer working for the USDA, US Department of Agriculture. My daily job is, big part of my daily job is to working with disease prevention, disease eradication, and basically with different issues related to controlling animal diseases. And I'm also for animal disease diagnostician, which make me one of the first responders in case we get any disease issue in the United States. I'm also a part of our rapid response team, incident management teams, and we are rotating our duties through the year. And we have, if in case we have any outbreak, we are deployed instantly to deal with disease. But I'm not going to talk about diseases, foreign animal diseases, also known as the transboundary animal diseases in specifics. I just want to add the veterinary role and part which we can play, which is very important in dealing with animal diseases. And I'm sure everybody goes is to make our work more effective, but with keeping some principle of our profession. I posted right here the American Veterinary Medical Association description of our job as veterinarian, which I think is applicable to regardless where you work, what type of animal responsibility you have, what type of work you're doing. It is industry directly with the pet, directly with the livestock. We all have some things in common which I would like to share with you. And basically, as you can see, AVMA describe veterinarians as, today veterinarians as the only doctors educated to protect the health of both animals and people, which put us already in very unique position, but also put extra responsibility for our action. We work hard to address the health and welfare needs of every species of animal. And I want to underline the welfare, which is bigger and bigger every time we're dealing with disease eradication. And veterinarians also play critical roles in environmental protection, research, food safety, and public health. So as you can see, we got a lot of responsibility, and also our profession put us in very unique position to make a difference. And I have to say, with my experience for, well, last month was, great to say, 30 years working in this position, those things change. And thankfully, it's going in right direction when more and more start to paying attention, not only to simple fact of dealing with the disease, eliminating disease, but also the fact how we're going to do that. We try to minimize the harm to animals, to environment, and to people involved. And that's playing bigger and bigger role. Now, the basic question we have to ask ourselves as the veterinarian, regardless what we're doing right now in our professional life, what makes us good fit for this job as the veterinarian? And I'm pretty sure, again, regardless what we're doing, we all got those few things in common. Number one is our commitment to animal health and well-being of animals. And we all got passion for animals, and most of us get to veterinary school because passion for animals and environment and wildlife and so on. So we have to keep this in mind. That's the main principle of our work, which should guide us through our action later on as the veterinarians. The foreign animal diseases or transboundary diseases, which I'm going to use as the example of our daily activities when we can use this principle based I outlined before, care for animal welfare and animal general well-being without compromising our main goal is to protect animals from disease. And if there are cases of disease outbreak, especially the serious one, transboundary diseases or foreign animal diseases, we have to keep in mind that actually dealing with those diseases prevent destruction, prevent the death in broader population. But by doing this, we don't want to create unnecessary suffering or problems for animals which are involved or species which are involved in specific disease. We also, some of you who already practice veterinary medicine for many years, as I do, you can see that what was 10, 20, or 30 years ago is not the same right now. There are a lot of changes around us, and globalization is one of the big issues. Good example of this webinar. If we got outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza in the United States or India or Middle East or somewhere else in the world, that's not only one country problem. The very quickly situation became global problem. Perfect example right now under the COVID. We can see how quickly virus can turn from local outbreak to pandemic. Is similar situation with certain animal diseases, and avian influenza is good example. Foot and mouth, and presently African swine fever, that are examples how globalization and combined with intense agricultural production make our work more challenging. Right now with the current model of agriculture, which try to minimize cost of production by increasing intensity of agricultural production, disease actually are spreading much faster and they are much harder to control, and also consequences are much severe than used to be when the disease were localized to small backyard sort of operation. Right now, if we get huge agricultural complex with thousands of animals on small areas, our challenges are much bigger, especially if you want to keep the principle of preserving animal well-being and animal welfare principles. So high impact animal diseases, such as African swine fever or foot and mouth, although they're affecting directly humans, but get indirect huge impact on human population by depriving a lot of people of food, nutrition they needed. And also it's not only a rural problem affecting agriculture in the rural areas, also affect the urban economics and people in the cities. So what I'm saying is foreign animal diseases and other diseases of importance are not limited anymore to specific location or to specific part of our society or human population, they have effect on all ways of life, and with the globalization, usually in all continents, all places where agriculture exists, animal exists. So basically, I want to underline how important it is to understand the foreign animal disease of today versus foreign animal disease of the past, but that's put us in unique situation as the veterinarians to not only directly deal with the specific pathogen, but also keep in mind other factors involved in animal disease control. And there are serious environmental consequences. For example, affecting a wild population with if animal livestock pathogen get to wildlife population can create serious damage. And always we can avoid this. We have to minimize as the veterinary professional eradication effort always causes some pain and suffering. Our job is make sure that when we are aware of it, and we try to minimize through our actions as the veterinarian and guide the people, and especially the decision makers, people above us, that what is the best way to minimize those factors so we don't create more damage than the disease we try to deal with it. And I already mentioned that high production area create the, unfortunately, more serious situation during this outbreak because we're talking much bigger number of animals which will be affected. And this disease spreading much faster, so we got less time to design program which will minimize the collateral damage, if you will, with dealing with the disease. So very quick, I don't have to remind everybody aware of it. Big part of our rural populations depends on having animals. And we have to keep in mind, if somebody gets 1 or 2 animals, if we remove 2 animals in the great scheme of eradication, that's very minimal damage, but for the specific household, that's devastating event. And it's very hard to deal with it, but unfortunately, sometimes that happens. So we have to keep, again, in mind animal welfare, but also welfare of animal owners and animal producers should be huge, and we have to keep this in mind. That's not only object of our disease eradication efforts. That's somebody's pet, somebody's main source of income, and we have to keep this in mind. As the veterinarians, we know we got this responsibility I mentioned in previous slides. We have to deal with very, very serious issue, actually sometimes critical issue for both animal and human population. But we also have to keep in mind, we as the animal health professional, as the veterinarians, we have to have compassion and understanding of animal needs. And in next slide, I will show you, somebody put this together like this. They call this the 5 freedoms. Basically, animal well-being comes from having 5 basic freedoms. And that's universal approach, which we always have to keep in mind regardless what we're doing. If we're dealing with the pets, if we work with the laboratory animals, or like myself and a lot of you probably dealing with animal eradication control efforts. Number 1 is, of course, freedom from hunger and thirst. We have to make sure, even if animals are subject to eradication program, they still will be affected for, their well-being will be affected by our action. And because they are subject of eradication, or unfortunately stamping out this main method, the destruction, eventually destruction, we have to keep in mind, we have to make them comfortable as much as possible during this unfortunate but necessary process. So freedom from hunger and thirst, which is self-explanatory, freedom from fear and distress, that's very important. We want to minimize stress of animals. They're already stressed by being handled by us, but we have to do everything what's possible to minimize those negative effects. freedom from discomfort and freedom from injury and disease. Now, summarizing all those points, we have to keep in mind that we never will be able to totally prevent those negative effects as described right here. But as the professional, animal health professional, our responsibility and job is to find the way and advise on the way to minimize this negative effect if we have to deal with situation where animals unfortunately have to be exposed to some drastic action like the population. And in general, as the general rule, any household or any situation when animals are kept, like laboratory animals or of course regular livestock, we have to make sure that we allow them as much as possible to express the natural behavior, because happy animal is healthy animals usually. So actually that's part of our effort of preventing disease introduction, but also taking care of animal well-being. So foreign animal diseases get huge impact not only directly on animals, but also on the other elements like environment, economics, animal well-being, and cultural and social. Cultural and social, I'll mention later on, I will use the example, are more and more part of our eradication and disease prevention activities. And I give you the example in a second, but that's the latest, which is added to our, we call the incident management team plans. We include these cultural and social elements to make sure the damage is minimized because our activities. Okay, there's a few quite drastic examples for environmental consequences of our action. I mean, our action as the veterinarians. And our job is to make sure this doesn't happen or is minimized. So this is example during a recent outbreak of African swine fever in Korea. They slaughtered 47,000 pigs, but they let the blood and whatever the remains were of the pigs to just run wild with unprotected to the river and streams. That's a very drastic and visual effect. What can get wrong if we don't pay too much attention, and we as the veterinarians who are the lead experts in disease eradication don't advise otherwise. And of course, carcasses floating in the water or carcasses being burned or burial, they all create environmental problems and environmental consequences. I know we not always can avoid this, but we have to design the way how safely we can minimize those consequences, negative consequences, using our skills and knowledge as the veterinarian, without jeopardizing our goal, which is to eradicate the disease. Actually, African swine fever, and I know for a fact, like from Vietnam and China, is big problem with people dumping dead sick animals and dead animals to the rivers, because from the disease control point of view, lack of guidelines or methods for safe disposal actually make the process worse and propagate the disease. So definitely we have to pay much more attention what happened after our action is done, which our action usually involves just eliminating, stamping out sick animals, but there is more to it. And the other environmental consequences are spillover of livestock pathogen to wildlife population. And I got very quick 3 examples. Episodic pneumonia in sheep and goats in the United States, western states and southwestern states create huge problem with bighorn sheep, which are endangered species, and are wild animals which are severely affected by those, I would say, relatively common pathogen in livestock, sheep and goats. African swine fever, well-known fact, affects the wild boar, wild pig population in Europe and Asia, and create huge problem die-offs in those wild population. And the recent example from the United States is rabbit hemorrhagic disease virus type 2, which spill over first time in the United States to the wild population and affect some even endangered species of rabbits in the United States. And the further go this situation, we create probably serious consequences in food chain because other predators, birds of prey and coyotes and other animals like predatory animals depends on this rabbits as the source of food. And if we create a situation where the population is decimated, the consequences, environmental consequences will be much, much more severe. That's only few, I don't say few, but some domestic rabbits, which of course is terrible, but the consequences will be much, much more severe. And I say my favorite, but one of the drastic example is this outbreak in Saiga antelope, which is an endangered species living in Eurasia. And this picture actually describes whole story. They get infected from the livestock by Pasteurella, Nucocida, and Pasteurella hit the unprotected, seronaive population and create huge damage in some population, up to 80% mortality. So that's what can happen if we don't keep under control disease in livestock. And livestock got contact with the wildlife, consequences are really, really severe. And this is a good example. Of course, I don't have to mention economic impact. Economic impact affects everybody. General population, because prices of food are rising. If there is some serious outbreak of the disease affecting of livestock, like avian influenza, for example, or African swine fever in other country, of course, foot and mouth and so on. So economic impact is always huge. And it's hard to even evaluate the impact. When I was working on foot and mouth in England in 2001 outbreak, a lot of those sheep population were unique to specific locations. And even if they were depopulated and government was paying money for those animals, they couldn't be replaced by different genetics. So the sometimes generation of hard work went to the toilet and nothing could be replaced. So the economic impact is huge. Actually, you can even measure sometimes in monetary value. And like right now, we know with the COVID, with all the restriction or public gathering and a lot of institutions were closed, especially zoos were affected because a lot of zoos were depending on the income from visitors, and because there were no visitors allowed, so a lot of those places were closed and actually got financial problems basically to survive. Some smaller institutions have to close. So the economic impact is huge and widespread of animal diseases. And of course, the factor which we always have to keep in mind is animal well-being, animal welfare issues. And you can see on the right there, one of the way of euthanasia is cervical dislocation in chicken, which I believe is practiced in India. And when I was in Philippines, actually, at the beginning of the outbreak, there were problems getting trained people to do this humane way and quickly, so disease doesn't spread. During the avian influenza outbreak, they enlist army to help them to euthanize the animal, but the training wasn't right. So people basically instead dislocated, do cervical dislocation, they were basically pulling the heads off from the chicken at the beginning. So animal well-being and animal welfare during the response to the animal disease is very important to design well method and train people so you don't have to face those issues. Maybe the outcome seems like it's the same, the animals are gone, but definitely animal welfare issue wasn't taken consideration sometimes. So that's very important when we design animal disease response. On the right, you can see, on the left, I'm sorry, my left, you can see the example also from England, from UK, where ladder sheep were depopulated as the effort to eliminate the foot and mouth. But there was one element which never was mentioned. I personally witnessed when the shepherd dogs, which is the only reason for living, sort of, was to take care of sheep and herd the sheep. When the animals were gone, those dogs went crazy. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They were running in circle, and actually there was serious consequences on animal well-being, which was rarely mentioned. And cultural social impact, of course, is very important. Later times we mentioned the human-animal bonds, which is very strong, and we never can dismiss this because that will get serious consequences later on for our efforts to eliminate diseases. And I'll show you in the next slide. And also cultural, religious, and the other reason we always have to be sensitive to it when designing or working on animal disease eradication or control program. And cultural social implication, that's a few examples from the latest outbreak in California when we get exotic Newcastle disease or virulent Newcastle disease outbreak, and we get a lot of social unrest. People people were protesting our action, and they were very active right now in social media. Everybody is active on social media. So that was a real challenge. Now I want to very quickly add the real example. So past 2 years, actually up to May of this year, we were dealing with outbreak of virulent Newcastle disease in Southern California. So in general, virulent Newcastle disease was eliminated from 15 states in the United States in 1950s, but there were a very significant large outbreak in California in 70s, 2002, 2003, and recently up to this year. And I just want to show you some scope of the outbreak and damage done to the population. Between May 17 and May 31st of this year, we confirmed 476 positive premises, which means each premise got from dozen to a few hundred birds. So there's a lot of birds, and we got also this time 4 commercial premises involved. Very quickly, again, the subject of this presentation is not just talk about for animal disease response, but very quickly to explain why we're doing what we're doing. We follow the OIE recommendation for dealing with disease by create the restriction zone, quarantine zone. We got infected premises, infected zone, and control zone. Infected premises, infected zone practically doesn't allow any movement of animals, and all animals and transportation of animals is prohibited, and animals are destroyed. In control zone, we just not allow any movement on animals, and all animals are tested. No animals, certain number of animals are tested. To make our response, which I mentioned before, could be pretty drastic, pretty wide range, which involve other animals. Unfortunately, we have to be destroy or remove. We try to minimize the collateral, if you will, damage by being more precise what we are doing. So on the right, you see the map of California, which include 2 quarantine sort of consequences of virulent Newcastle disease. Quarantine zone, this is the small one in this sand color, yellowish color counties in California, which is quarantine zone, nothing can move in, nothing can move out. And no mail zone, I don't know if in other countries, but US, a lot of birds, a lot of poultry is purchased online and delivered from remote location, different states. So that no mail zone was extended much above the actual quarantine zone. And to show you more precise approach, which we try to minimize the number of animals we have to remove, there are 4 different towns showing the quarantine zone, which is basically based on the neighborhood and risk factors, not general like one city, like in this case, say Mira Loma is quarantine. or Fontanes quarantine. We try to be more precise and try to base our response on the high-risk areas. And we use also our epidemiology to design this activity zones. And epidemiology is very important in our response because basically everything is epidemiological driven, our response. There's an example of our mapping system, computerized system, which we use to define high risk groups based on sample size, based on number of birds we know of, and then we calculate number of samples we have to collect. So basically what I'm saying, we try to be more precise, not to use broad stroke and just skill based on the area, geographic area of, or municipal area, like one city on town. We try to be more precise, which minimize the animal need for animal removal, destruction, and basically we have to depopulate less animals. Now, the big part is, of course, to do outreach so people understand why we're doing. This is a sign when ladies say, why kill healthy birds? They don't understand that our effort to eliminate disease involve not only eliminate infected premises, but also create the control zone, which create barrier preventing spread of the disease. And clinically it seems healthy birds, but maybe they are exposed, has to be also destroyed. So the general public disease outreach is very important. Each our response task force include the veterinarian who is dedicated as the public information officer. And this is an example, she is meeting with local residents to explain why we're doing what we're doing, why we have to eliminate seemingly healthy birds. And we, as the veterinarian, are the people, as the people. We, as the veterinarians, the professional people we listen to, because everybody understands we have leading role or responsibilities to deal with the disease. So that's a big part right now of our outreach. Outreach is a big part of our response to foreign animal diseases, and always is the part of our core response team. So very quickly, a few pictures from California. So what we're doing, what we're facing during these 2 years in California, responding to virulent Newcastle disease. So there were a lot of challenges, of course. As you can see, the location probably looks familiar to many of you. That's how a lot of places in California when the birds were kept looks like. So definitely big challenge is always any disease eradication effort is humane, and I want to underline humane euthanasia and disposal. So what we're doing, our preferred method is using CO2 to gas birds. So that's minimized stress and is most efficient. And we can apply individual methods, like in this case for one chicken, or we have, we usually actually adapt the garbage cans as the containers so we can utilize number of birds. And that's how they looks like in the field. That's how they looks in California. That's what we're doing to make this efficient, fast, and minimize the stress on birds, and minimize the unnecessary handling and scaring birds. And of course, biosecurity is always concerned. We have to balance between design the humane way to dispose of animals, but also we have to do it by a secure way. We don't want to be part of the problem, we want to be solution. So this is the example how we proceed after birds are euthanized. And disinfection and cleaning the places is huge challenge. In this case, biosecurity was of course concerned, but we opt in most cases, because the climate issue, California is pretty hot, we allow, after the population, we mandate each place will be vacant for 120 days, and we get crews monitoring. There's really not any new birds added. After 120 days, the premises were allowed to bring the birds after the original quarantine will be removed. So usually it takes much longer than 120 days, but that was our approach to biosecurity during the outbreak in California. And of course, the animal welfare and responder safety is a huge issue. This is an example how some of those fighting birds are kept. They are tethered to these chains, and they are pretty stressed because what they do, they were bred and trained to fight the other birds. So they could be pretty aggressive in our view, birds, and basically removing them from this condition when they are chained to the post. Actually, that was, I think that was from animal welfare point of view, good things to do. And I'm almost done. So as June 1st, United States meet all the requirements of OIE, and the eradication effort was finished in California, and there's no more cases or restricted movement restriction in California. And thank you very much. So I'm sorry if I went too much over time. I apologize to next speakers, but I try to do as fast as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lech. That was very nice. You showed us live examples of the cases that you handle on a regular basis. So from there, we move on to another aspect that veterinarians deal with. Perhaps in this call, we have about 10 of them who actually deal with wildlife. And all have been, for all of these veterinarians, the next speaker happens to be an inspiration. Dr. Kushal Kumar Sharma is currently the professor and head of the Department of Surgery and Radiology at the College of Veterinary Sciences, Guwahati, Khanapara. He's been associated with a very unique job of Asiatic elephant conservation, and has been recently awarded the first veterinarian being awarded the Padma Shri Award in India. It's a national award for, and I think he's the first veterinarian to get that award for doing something in the field of veterinary sciences. It's a great honor to now hand over the stage to Dr. Kushal Kumar Sharma. Sir, please can you take us through your presentation?
Thank you, Mrinal. First of all, good morning to Dr. Lech, and good evening to all my Indian colleagues or like in nearby countries. So my lecture today that has been assigned to me is on zoonosis and wildlife. So I am going to talk on zoonosis or zoonotic diseases and wildlife. First of all, just textbook definition of zoonosis that I want to just talk to you. Zoonosis are defined as the diseases and infections which are naturally transmitted between vertebrate animals and man. So I'm not going to give you a very broad definition, because I know most of the participants are academicians, they know about it. But what important thing, probably many of us do not know, that there are about 1,000 diseases that affects animals, out of which 300 diseases are common to both man and animals, and 200 of them can naturally transmit between man and animals. So then emerging zoonosis, like spontaneous or malicious mutations or microorganisms, result in emergence of new variants of known diseases like influenza, or totally new entity like AIDS, like that. So this is one which I mean spontaneous, that take place because of the environmental variations and all that, like climate change. So mutations take place in microorganisms because of natural factors, and they emerge as more virulent, like the various forms of influenza that we have been facing in the recent years. Then also one very disturbing thing, that the works in the field of biotechnology, like rDNA technology, that also open potentially dangerous possibilities of new agents, like we have been hearing about the COVID-19. I'm not very sure. People are talking about it. I have been reading many articles on that this has been engineered or maybe maliciously or by accident. But these things are possible. So this is particularly relevant in the present day context where we have a havoc going on in the all throughout the globe, like COVID-19. So till now we have 2 crore, like 20 million people affected. 7 lakh of people have already lost their lives. The global economy crashed, grounded. The air grounded. Industries has closed down, and livelihood has like been lost. People are suffering. People are starving in many countries. So this is a global pandemic. You can see the whole of the world, like almost every country is now affected with this. Now, the so far as the corona is concerned, there is like what we can see that until and unless a vaccine comes to the market, we have heard that over 30 vaccines are under trial in various stages of trial. The testing is going on at a very rapid stage, like thousands of cases are being tested. And on an average now, even in India, our figures stand somewhere above 50,000 per day. So this is such a eye opener for our, so far as the like the zoonotic diseases are concerned. Now, the common belief of the people, or like what initially was talked about, that was it pangolin or bat that has spread the disease to human being because of this type of meats are being consumed in China from the wet market, or it is the Wuhan Institute of Virology. People also blame that I have already discussed that accidentally or maliciously this was done. But anyway, the whole globe, in the entire the world is suffering because of this. Now, diseases in wild animals can be divided into 2 categories, like diseases of captive wild animals and diseases of free-ranging wild animals. Now, we have to separate both the categories because the free-ranging wild animals, we cannot directly handle them. Indirectly only we can handle and touch. But the captive wild animals that we maintain in the zoos, the scenario is little different. Now, for captive wild animals, there is, like, if we can go for good management practices like housing, feeding, then sanitation, day-to-day management, and measures to control diseases. So these are the good things or good practices that we can follow in terms of the captive wild animals. But in case of the free-ranging wild animals, we don't have this option with us. So many a time it's very difficult to get diseases, or because most of the like dead animals are consumed by the predators. Now the diseases are like infectious diseases, non-infectious diseases. So bacterial, viral, parasitic, you all know it. I do not have to say anything in detail. There are other managemental hazards for the free-ranging wild animals, or even captive wild animals also, like various types of stress. Right now, the temperature is very high in whole of India, so that is a big stress. We lose many wild animals because of the climatic stressors like heat stress and all. So intra or interspecies conflicts, particularly in the free-ranging conditions, then drowning of wild animals, sometimes particularly during sedation, electrocution, or capture myopathy, etc. So these are the management problems. But we also have severe problems in working with free-ranging or free-living wild animals. In free-ranging wild animals, diseases are more difficult to detect, and as I have already said, sick and dead animals are consumed or removed by predators and scavengers, and they are not available for investigation most of the time, because by the time the report comes, we actually lose the carcass. The information on basic factors that influence diseases such as food habits, nutritional requirements, behavior, like normal biochemical parameters, and these are not known, and susceptibility to various agents are also unknown in case of wild animals. Then, moreover, like what advantage or we have in captive wild animals, that we can go for immunization, we can go for deworming, but these methods are not possible in case of the free-ranging wild animals, and which are only limited to captive wild animals. Management of disease in wild animal with like primarily is through manipulation of habitat population management or indirect immunization as practice. Like Dr. Lech has just now mentioned about the wild animals. Like in India, we have varieties of wild animals, and like the handling is also extremely difficult, and we cannot go for invasive kind of management of diseases in case of wild animals. Then there is another thing is wild animal and captive animal interface. Unlike the developed countries, we have a large population of captive animals, and the difference with other developing countries is that here, like almost every household has their own group of captive animals that particularly near the protected areas, these animals are released and allowed to go to the like the wildlife areas. So that is how the disease interface is very high. So spreading of diseases from domestic to wild and vice versa is very common, and sometimes it becomes extremely difficult for us. Moreover, like what we can do in case of the captive animals or birds, we can go for euthanasia or that kind of a program for management of disease, which we cannot do in case of wild animals. Even we have faced, like when there is a singular animal injured very badly, or maybe the animal is suffering, then we propose for euthanasia. Still the animal rights or animal welfare group, they come in between and they create problem for us. So for the health management program, we have the preventive measures so that we can avoid outbreak. That we do by vaccination or indirect vaccination, what we call as barrier vaccination of the domestic animals that live around the protected areas. So I was saying about the preventive measures as well as health monitoring operations. So the for vaccination and all that. Now, okay. So for the health monitoring operation, routine features through body condition evaluation and fat reserve estimation. So these are the things that we do, that is indirectly health monitoring. Next, please. By observing the animal disease diagnostic operation in case of wild animals, then there are laboratory based methods that we can use serological or body fluid estimation. But in these cases, if they are wild animals, we have to collect samples from individual animals, then screen for virus or bacteria or parasites, so on. And also, of course, during the post-mortem investigation. Then we have the disease control operations during an outbreak, then disease impact assessment, what damages the disease or outbreak has caused. Then finally, the management strategy that we have adopted is evaluated. So these are the methods that we follow in India, so far as the wild animal disease outbreaks are concerned. Now, all your strategies go haywire when you have such a situation like flood. This type of severe environmental condition or disaster conditions force humans and animals to live in such proximity and quite a long time. Like this has happened in Assam this time for 4 occasions, and it is an annual feature in Assam. So even there are many instances where even a tiger comes enter a house and share the habitat. So in this type of condition, all your protection measures actually collapse and disease likely to spread. Okay, so this gentleman, see, he has hunted uh, down an elephant for the trophy that is just the tail. Now you you find such people. These people were in rampant in the past, but now in spite of the lot of protection measures, you still find such people. Now what they do not know that in this process they also cause spread of diseases, the zoonotic diseases, because they kill the animal, it's all right, but they bring diseases from the wild animals to human being. I am giving you some examples, more examples. Next, please. Now, these are various trophies. The previous one, I was talking about the trophies. So you have these trophies made of ivory or like an animal bone. Now, this we know that there are various diseases that can be carried in untreated animal trophies. So we keep all these things in our houses. Like many people buy it and sponsor it without knowing that these trophies can also cause spread of the disease. Next, please. Now, the human and animal contact or interface. Now, you can see this child, he loves the elephant and he embraces it. Now, little knows that there are so many diseases, particularly in such case, tuberculosis is a big concern. Like our people in the developing countries, very few people have knowledge about this situation. And so they do these things, and in the process, disease spread. Next, please. Now come to the big zoonotic issue. Like rabies is such a big issue in all developing countries, particularly in India. And as per an estimate, I found that 80,000 people lose their life because of rabies. So mostly spread by the domestic dogs or the stray dogs which are not vaccinated. Next, please. Now, besides the dog bites, there are other methods also by which the rabies is spread. You can see a patient suffering in clinical form of rabies, where actually there is no possibility on any treatment. Next, please. Now, it is not only the dog that can spread the rabies, particularly the sylvatic rabbit have wild connections. Like domestic dogs, captive dogs and all that, you can have your measures, you can vaccinate them. But what can you do with the sylvatic rabbit? This is a wild jackal affected with rabies, or even bat, they can spread the disease. Now, like the entire year, they do not spread the disease, but when there is a stress condition, we have seen when there is a drought condition, there is scarcity of food or other environmental stressor. These wild animals that harbor the rabies virus, they start spreading the virus in their saliva and spread the disease. Next, please. We have a lot of anti-rabies program going on in India, like even in our like World Veterinary Day recently. Like it's a regular feature. We organize anti-rabies vaccination program and other programs that for control of rabies. Next, please. Now, the other or re-emerging zoonotic disease of big concern is the tuberculosis. Now, you can see an elephant affected with tuberculosis, and you can see a human lung X-ray showing tuberculous lung. Now, particularly in captive elephants, I have seen there is a very high incidence of the tuberculosis. There are a lot of elephant tuberculosis reported from America also. In Indian subcontinent, particularly in Nepal, they are near the Chauraha, what is called the Chetawan National Park, the tourist elephants. There is a report that up to 25% of the elephants are affected with tuberculosis. Then also in Kerala, temple elephants or other elephants, there are also very high incidence of tuberculosis. Fortunately, the elephants of northeastern region and Bengal, they live, even though the captive elephants, they have access to the natural forage or natural habitat. So the incidence of rabies is much lower. Sorry, incidence of tuberculosis is much lower, but it's there. So basically, it is also a disease of stress, particularly when there is different types of stress, particularly food stress or animal overcrowding, or they are kept in closed rooms with low oxygen. The animals suffer from tuberculosis. So it is a big concern, and so it is a very old disease in Asian subcontinent and like Asian continent, entire Asian, and then it still remains a concern because now we have more and more resistant varieties of the tuberculous organism that is really giving us big trouble. Next, please. Then come to anthrax. So of course, it is a spore-forming bacteria that causes anthrax, but sporadically we find in various wild habitat, even in wild elephants also. Like last couple of years, we have seen many elephant dead because of anthrax, and also in last year in Jaldapara National Park, we lost 6 rhinoceros because of anthrax infection. So this is a big concern. And besides causing death in mammals like elephant or rhinoceros, they also affect human being, which is mostly an occupational disease. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is a lion that died of anthrax. You can see the blood oozing out through his mouth. Next, please. Yes. So this is a zebra in an African forest. So you can see this also animal died of diagnosed to be a case of anthrax. So the other thing, the next one, the tiger skin. So this is a tiger skin. We know that almost the entire tiger population of India was annihilated. It came down to a very low figure of 400 due to excessive hunting. Now, of course, thanks to efforts of the NGOs and government and NTCA, the tiger population has revived, and probably it is now touching 4,000 figure, 3,000 something, below 4. But see, the tiger bone and tiger skin, the hide, these things are the trophy of interest. Now, these trophies can also spread, because these are not treated. So this can also spread anthrax particularly, or maybe some other diseases. So this is how the actually wild animal disease can come to human population and vice versa. Next, please. The anthrax cause the various kinds of skin infections that we can see, but we also have record of an anthrax epidemic in a North Assam district called Udalguri a couple of years back. So we found that this animal consumed a carcass of a cow that died of anthrax. They didn't know. Probably they take half-cooked meat, and as high as 36, I think a 36 number of people died because of full-blown anthrax, which is very rare in case of human being. But generally they cause the wool shorter's disease or other carbuncles in their fingers or body parts. Next, please. So there are so many zoonotic diseases. I have already said there are about 300 zoonotic diseases, out of which 200 are commonly or big concern. But here I am mentioning the disease which many of which I have already discussed, and they are all of concern. So rabies, Japanese encephalitis, rickettsiosis, salmonellosis, brucellosis, leptospira, plague, dermatomycosis, toxoplasmosis, aspergillosis, nocardiasis, then cryptococcus, leishmaniasis, what we call a kalajar. This is a big concern in Assam. Again, it's re-emerging. Then cysticercosis, echinococcosis, tuberculosis, I have already described, anthrax, glanders, Q fever, listeriasis, swine flu, avian flu. These are diseases of big important so far as the zoonosis is concerned. Next, please. Now, diseases of animals' origin and established in human beings. For example, AIDS. Now, it is an established disease, but we know that AIDS have come from primates. Now, domestic or wild animals act as reservoir of zoonotic agents, may not show clinical disease, but remain infective for a long period, with what we call as zooanthroponesis, or just the reverse, man to animal. When the disease spreads, this is called anthropozoonosis. Next, please. So both type of diseases or both type of diseases are common. Now, common diseases transmitted by wild animals. Again, this same name comes as viral disease, bacterial disease, and protozoal like that. So we have African hemorrhagic disease, Argentine hemorrhagic fever, cowpox, influenza, rabies, and yellow fever, anthrax, cat scratch fever, leptospirosis, Lyme disease, plague, Q fever, salmonellosis, tuberculosis, and typhus fever. Then cryptococcus, ringworm, then also protozoal diseases like babesiosis, toxoplasmosis, trichinellosis. These diseases spread from animals to human beings. Next, please. Now, the wildlife veterinary profession have double hazards actually. So finally coming to the real service delivery, we have to face the physical attacks of animals and at the same time the potential for contacting virulent infection from the wild animals. So this is double hazard we have. Then what approach we must follow? If we want to work in wildlife, then we must have good conditions physically, technically, as well as emotionally. Previous, please. Now, getting actively immune. No, previous. I am coming to the end. Getting actively immunized wherever possible. Like, for example, we can have vaccination against rabies, like that. Then adherence to biosafety measures, like taking protective gear, then antisepsis, periodic medical checkup, proper disposal of hazardous materials, etc. And we must avoid undue exposure. Next, please. So coming to the end, now the whole world is talking about one health approach. Now veterinarians and the medical professionals, they were working in tandem, but they never worked together in the past. When like Edward Jenner, he discovered the pox like that and other, then only people started realizing that diseases are there in animals and human beings as well as the environment. So human health, animal health, and environmental health, these three things are to be maintained. And now that the past thing is gone, we must go for the one health approach. The human doctor as well as the animal doctor must work in tandem, so that and must supplement each other. So only when we can have a healthy animal population as well as human population. Next, please. So with this, I conclude. I think I have taken a little more time because of the presentation disturbance. So, Minal, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. These few minutes of extra time that you've taken have been enriching for us. Thank you so much, sir.
Most welcome. So,
coming to the last presentation of today, we will hear a short account on the veterinary profession in India from Dr. Munmun Sarma.
Good evening to all, and good morning to Dr. Le. And let me start with my presentation. Topic is veterinary profession in India. So, by swearing in the veterinarian's oath, let me start with, if we say veterinary profession, it's a big chapter. So let me divide it into three portions: ancient years, pre-independence period, and after that, independence. So if we see that veterinary profession in the ancient times, the veterinary cult started 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. Veterinary medicine was included in medical curriculum in the post-Vedic period. Veterinary hospitals and dispensaries were established during the reign of great Emperor Chandragupta Maurya, that is from 300 to 298 BC, and King Ashoka 268 to 232 BC. In ancient times, veterinarians were known as Salihotriya, as the horse medicine authority was called as Salihotra. Then the veterinarians were redesignated as Salutri. Then famous ancient elephant treatises Hasti Ayurveda and Hasti Vidyanagar were written detailing on the elephant ailments and treatments. Pashu Ayurveda is another ancient book on the welfare of animals and birds, which has special chapters like Ashwa Ayurveda, which deals with the welfare of the horses, then Gaja Ayurveda, which deals with the treatment of the elephants, and Go Ayurveda means welfare of the cows. However, the growth of veterinary science under Agricultural University was stunted due to least attention which necessitated establishment of veterinary universities in India. So Tamil Nadu University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences was the first veterinary university established in 1989, second being West Bengal University of Animal and Fishery Sciences in 1995, so on and so forth. Now we are having 17 number of universities in India as we see that companion animals is the practice from time immemorial. Hence, role of veterinarians has increased manifold, ranging from healthcare, maintenance to disease control. Therefore, highly skilled veterinarians are to be nurtured in the society. To regulate all these, to regulate the veterinary practices in India to produce skilled veterinarians for the society, the government of India under the Ministry of Agriculture has formed the Veterinary Council of India in 1984 as a statutory body with several objectives. There are 9 objectives. I won't be touching all the 9 objectives. I am coming to only the 3 objectives that are important in the present day scenario. So I'm coming to the 5th one, which is to negotiate with institutions located in other countries, imparting training in veterinary education for recognition of qualification on reciprocal basis, to regulate veterinary practice in the country, and to advise the center and the state governments on all regulatory matters concerning veterinary practice and education. Now, role of the veterinarians in the society, we all know that veterinarians contribute to strengthen surveillance and response to all communication diseases which are or may emerge as health threats, zoonosis and floodborne diseases, surveillance and containment of microbial antigens, agents in animals and its implication in humans. To oversee the feeding and diet of animals, feed production of both animals and human, food security, etc. To control and contain the outbreaks of diseases and epidemics, veterinarians also play an important role in protection of the environment and the climate change. Therefore, important issues of veterinarians which needs to be addressed for betterment of the veterinary profession in future. So I'll be giving more stress on these issues, which we are to put more efforts for our profession. Okay. So first is important issue is the revision of the veterinary curriculum with emphasis on practical learning. So more emphasis should be given on the practical side rather than the theoretical side. Then there should be model act for course curriculum for veterinary colleges under different universities across the country. There should be equivalence of graduate qualification of Bachelor of Veterinary degree and Animal Husbandry degree to Doctor of Veterinary Medicine of international standard. There should be managing of postgraduate courses and doctoral degree by Veterinary Council of India to improve service conditions of field veterinarians, private practitioners, and veterinary entrepreneurs, to maintain the parity and transparency at recognition of veterinary institutions providing bachelor's degree. Again, another important issue is to bring a law for safety of veterinarians working in different conditions, protection from physical and mental abuse which our veterinarians are facing from time to time. This should be in similar line with the protection of Medicare service institution. We need to establish the Indian Indian Council of Veterinary Research. There should be some welfare of the wildlife vets who are working in forest condition departments, then NGOs for the prospects and their benefits. Then another important issue is introduction of Indian Forest Veterinary Service in the line of IAS, IPS, etc. There should be parity of NP of university and state government vets at par with central government scale. To create job opportunity for unemployed veterinarians, there are unemployed veterinarians. So we should think about them also. And some veterinarians are working in some harsh conditions, unsafe conditions for them, hazard allowance is required. Then there should be generation of opportunities for lady veterinarians and an extension of all necessary support in the professional issues. With these few words, I want to conclude. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for a short and snappy view of what's going on in this country and what should be done for the veterinarians right now.
Yes.
If you can, we'll try to use a few more minutes to address some questions that have come.
Yes.
Dr. Lech, your presentation went very smooth. There are not too many questions people are asking about that part. There was a question from Dr. Indranil Pahari, and he asked, please describe about the treatment plan adopted for free-ranging wild animals. Well, the question is not very clear. It seems like a very wide topic, but if you can just give a broad overview.
I think I have already touched a little bit.
Yeah.
Because while discussing the differences of the free-ranging animals and animals in captivity, like animals in the zoos, like the zoo animals, you can manage, you can plan your program very properly. Like you can have a routine or periodical health checkup, physical checkup, fecal examination, blood and urine examination, and all sorts of things. And you can monitor their everyday feed intake, defecation, urination, just like we do in case of our other livestock or companion animals. The problem with wild animals is extremely difficult because first thing, many a time you do not even know that the animals are dying. As I said, the carcass may have been removed by predators or may have already been decomposed. So very rarely we get to know if the park is a very big one. Just like in Kaziranga National Park or Manas National Park, we do not even know. So we do some preemptive healthcare procedure. What is the preemptive healthcare procedure? We try to reduce the livestock and wildlife, the interface. You know, the livestock of the fringe areas, they enter the park and they graze in the same area. Maybe they defecate in the same area where the parasites may be there or other infectious agents may be there. Maybe livestock animals go inside and die of anthrax, which may be devoured by some other wild animals and get infected, or the anthrax spores might remain there. So we try to go for ring vaccination, like the all the livestock that lives around the national parks or other wildlife areas are routinely vaccinated. And for that, actually, the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Government of India, they have funds allocated to each and every national park, and veterinarians help, or sometimes veterinarians decide what vaccine are to be given and in which. Then if we have individual animals injured or something, then you would know the treatment is as per the cause. But we have a general, like, don't touch the wild animals as much as possible, treat them indirectly. So that is the basic principle, but generally, like, but individually it's different.
So there's another question to your specialty on elephants.
Yeah.
This is from Dr. Kamal Sharma. He has asked whether the possibility of higher incidences of TB in domestic elephants of the northeastern region are especially used in vigorous works like log pulling. So does vigorous works actually...
let me tell you, there are some misconceptions. Actually, the Kamal Sharma probably is from Assam only, now working in Jammu. But
Yeah.
there is different Kamal Sharma.
Yeah.
Maybe, anyway, my student. The first thing is that logging is banned from December 1996 by Supreme Court of India. So there is no commercial logging anymore. So that strenuous work of commercial logging is gone. But Mrinal, you will be interested to know that a research project that we carried out for screening of our elephants for tuberculosis particularly, we found out of 86 elephants, only 2 elephants were positive, and we could cure those 2 elephants also after by proper treatment. But if you see if you compare the situation, in Kerala, I am told that there are 25 to 30% animals affected with tuberculosis. Similarly, I mentioned also about Nepal in Choraha, 25 to 30% animals have tuberculosis because the keeping conditions and living conditions are totally abnormal there. They are living in concrete floor, closed houses, and in like in Kerala, they are being given coconut leaves like that. Or if you go to Nepal, they are giving paddy straw. An elephant that cannot see a, a blade of green grass in its entire life. You just imagine. So that type of a stressful condition actually makes them affected with tuberculosis, make them vulnerable. Fortunately, in northeastern region, tuberculosis is not our concern. But I tell you, our concern is still parasitic infestation. Like we still, in fact, it will always be there because of our climate, hot, humid climate. So parasitism is there. We have a lot of fasciola infestation, the liver fluke that kills elephant. We have a lot of strongyle infections that also kill elephants. So our main concern is parasites, because every elephant is affected with parasites. For other diseases that can be prevented by vaccination, we routinely resort to vaccinating our captive elephants against the other diseases like foot and mouth disease, anthrax, then hemorrhagic septicemia, uh, then even tetanus prophylaxis we do. We give against rabies also. So all these vaccinations are routinely done as per the set protocol, and fortunately, this type of epidemics or this type of infections are under control.
Thank you, sir. There's one more question for you, but before that, I would like to take another question for Dr. Lech so that it gets mixed up better. Dr. Vikram wants to ask Dr. Lech a question. He's unmuted right now. Please go ahead, doctor.
Hi, good morning, Lech. Can you hear me?
Yes. Here's my buddy, that disclaimer. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Lech. Lech, actually, this webinar is more focused on the northeastern part of this country, and I congratulate Dr. Mrinal and Dr. Kushal for the excellent presentation. Great to have you, Dr. Kushal, and it was a wonderful presentation. Lech, here's something I want to ask you in continuation with what Dr. Kushal said about tuberculosis in wild animals. This country doesn't have a national TB control program in animals. Okay, and we don't have a test and cull policy. It's only the testing and screening, and nothing happens to what comes out positive. And our state of Himachal Pradesh, from which I belong, our administrators are very strongly focused on uh, mitigating tuberculosis, both zoonotic TB as per the United Nations or WHO's protocol of ending TB by 2030, as you know very well. And that seems quite far approach. Although TB screening by tuberculin PPD can be done possibly quite well, but the major concern is about tuberculosis transmission through milk. And that could only be possible only by doing ELISA and PCR kits, which are not readily available in this part of the country. So, Lech, my question to you is, how do you suggest certain means of mitigating tuberculosis bovine TB when test and cull policy is not applicable in this country? And the second part of the question is, if we find certain TB positive cases, which Dr. Kushal Kumar Sarma very rightly said that it's prevalent in Nepal, in wildlife, in elephants, and everybody, how to mitigate this tuberculosis, zoonotic TB, as a matter of fact, in this country? Thank you.
Vikram, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a huge question, as you know this from previous, presentations, and probably we need a few hours to discuss this. But what's going on, like in the United States right now, when we got pretty strict testing and removal tuberculosis programs, we were basically able to remove all the infection from domestic population, mainly cattle and so on.
Yeah.
We got some outbreak from time to time through introductions. But what happened, speaking of wildlife, we got reservoir of tuberculosis and brucellosis actually together in Yellowstone, for example, where the population of elk is infected, is normal fact that they are infected, and local ranchers and cattlemen they are always concerned and complain that we get the source of infection around domestic animals. And although the United States is free of tuberculosis in general in livestock, but still got those packet of tuberculosis in wildlife. Same thing in white-tailed deer in Michigan. So that's actually underlying the importance of eliminating tuberculosis not only from the livestock, but at the same time working with the wild population reservoir, which usually get the tuberculosis at the beginning from livestock. So it's sort of vicious circle. I know in India, there's also a big problem with tuberculosis in slut bears, the dancing bear, which are confiscated illegal activity in India. And I remember I met with some vets in India who were saying that big percentage of those confiscated animals are positive for tuberculosis. So there is a lot of interaction between human population, between wildlife and livestock. To answer question in general, you will have to address all those three issues at once. If you address the issue of tuberculosis one population, but you left other two populations, say, addressing people, and then you have wildlife or livestock question of tuberculosis not addressed, and basically, I don't say you waste your time, but basically you will never be able to eradicate tuberculosis. Even in the United States, where the tuberculosis effort is going for decades, tuberculosis eradication for decades, and finally was almost successful, almost, I'm saying, because we still got those pockets in wildlife, which can serve and do serve sometimes as the source of infection. You will never be able to eradicate tuberculosis. I know the India program is talking about 2030, like 10 years. Wow, you have a lot of work ahead of you to work on those three aspects of tuberculosis: wildlife, definitely, the livestock, and human part. And that will reflect also on the, like you mentioned, the milk and so on. So again, this is a big topic. Maybe we have the other meeting talking about zoonotic disease interaction between wildlife and domestic and human population. It's hard to say in a few minutes what's going on. But basically, the answer is you have to address three sources of infection: human population, wildlife, and livestock in order to start eradication of tuberculosis.
Great,
Can I come in, Dr. Bikram?
Yeah, Dr. Kushal.
As Dr. Lej has rightly said, that there are components that if we leave one component, we will never be able to control it. But primarily, you will see, like in human being in India, we have seen that tuberculosis is a disease of poverty. Those people who are poor, have no good nourishment, then they are unlikely to suffer higher. Now, in case of elephant in particular, the captive elephants, I mean, our primary source is another, that is the mahouts, the elephant the handlers. You know, the elephant handlers are very much in close contact with the elephants. So our protocol is like every year, twice, we check all the mahouts for like tuberculosis. So the mahouts are checked for tuberculosis twice a year, and that route is closed. And other experience that I have, because if we compare the elephant population, captive elephant population of Nepal and Kerala and of northeastern region, we see the basic difference is that in northeastern region, the captive elephants, even the captive elephants live a near natural life, like they can, and they are never tied inside a house or any closed environment. They are generally chained, if they are at all to be chained, they are chained outside, or generally at night they are released for grazing. They behave just like they get the similar opportunities, just like the wild animals. So when you keep the animals in natural environment, I think the possibility of diseases like tuberculosis will be much less. You maintain their health, proper healthcare protocol, deworming, vaccination, and keeping proper health will actually keep them free from tuberculosis. And what we should do is that routinely the handlers, particularly the mahouts, are checked against the disease. And if we find anybody affected, he is immediately removed and never allowed to come near the elephant, and he goes for treatment. So that is our protocol. So that is why I fully support what Dr. Lace had said. All the three components must be noticed. Then only we can control it.
Thank you, Dr. So there are two other questions on elephants again, and perhaps this is more than elephant. It's about human-animal conflict.
Sure.
Dr. Manish Pingle, he asks you, can you say a few words on human-animal conflict? And the other one is from is labeled as UER, but the simple question of what is a simple way of oral medication in elephants? So one is
let me take the second question first.
Okay.
Actually, for best method of feeding an elephant in particular, that is, we use some sweetener, some luring, like we mix it in a fruit, like you open up as like what is called pineapple, and put the tablets there, and the elephants readily take it. So most of the oral medications are done like that. Sweet banana, ripe banana is taken, it is split, and we conceal the tablet inside, and we give the animal, or we can mix the tablet in jaggery or like that. Sometimes some elephants, they refuse to take medicine orally. So there is also a method, like we can design a wooden gag, actually, wooden gag with a hole inside, and you insert a stomach tube through that, and you can drench the medicine if it is extremely necessary. But otherwise, there is another beautiful route for elephants. You can go by rectal route. You know, the colon of elephants can easily absorb 60% of what you administer. So suppose one of my friends from Germany, he conducted research in Indonesia, and he found that almost every medicine, minimum 60% is absorbed when given through the rectal route. And giving like fluid and all, we prefer the rectal route. It's very fast and very effective when intravenous route is considered slow. So oral medication is not difficult. Even we have medicated wild elephants orally, like you keep the tablets concealed in some jaggery or something, and just keep it there. The elephant will come and take it. So that is the first part, I think. So oral medication is, I tell you secretly, of course, that elephants are the best subject to treat. Like, I have treated dogs, I have treated horses, cows, and like every other animal in my life. But I tell you, treating elephant is the easiest thing. Anyway, the second part of that is the first part of the question was human-elephant conflict and how to mitigate. See, this is a very long question to summarize and speak in 2 sentences. Primarily, I would say that we have occupied their place. Like we have displaced the elephants from their habitat. So the conflict, because our people have gone into, I give you 2 examples. At the time of independence, the population of entire Northeast was, which was known as Assam in those days, the population of Assam was simply just 30 lakh. 30 lakh, you just imagine. And today, Assam alone have a population of 3.7 lakh. 3.7 crore. From 30 lakh to 3.7 crore. That also only in 2 valleys, Brahmaputra Valley and Barak Valley. You can see the exponential growth of human beings. This population will definitely need space to live, and only space they find is the protected areas. So the elephants have been displaced from their habitat, and that is why the conflict. Now, there cannot be any shortcut solution to this big problem that we have created. We have to think of restoring the habitat and developing connectivity between habitat, because elephants, they have a traditional method of movement, migration, like what is called seasonal migration. Another is called annual migration. So animal need to move. Elephant need a lot of food. Mega herbivorous animal, 250 kg fodder and 200 to 300 liter of water every day. So the requirement is so high. If they stay in one place, they will make it desert in a month. So instinctively, they keep moving. And so on the west, you see the whole of Terai and the Duars then the northern Assam up to China. This was the elephant annual migration route. So they start from one place and they return to that place after 3 years maybe. They keep moving, and now we have blocked all these movement routes. Now elephants are forced to live in isolated islands with no connectivity. People have started settlement. People have started tea plantations. So like the conflict is a result of our stupid actions. We must know what we have done, and it's almost irreversible now. It's almost irreversible because again, elephants or wild animals do not vote. We vote, so we are very important in this context. So we will never actually give their areas back to them. Unlikely. You know, I am sitting just in my college. Backside of this is the wildlife sanctuary, Amchang Wildlife Sanctuary. Do you know? 60,000 people have encroached this wildlife sanctuary, where there are 100 elephants. Elephants have no place to stay inside. They are roaming in the streets of Guwahati city. So, and you blame the elephants for creating conflict. Who has created conflict? Oh, I have given you only one example, and that is the story of almost whole of northeastern region, particularly in Assam and also some other parts. So, if we do not think logically and decide to control our population, then the conflict is going to grow. Now we have many shortcut solutions just to save life and properties of people. We do various methods like physical barriers, then biological fencing. We even employ kunkis, power fencing, or various other methods. But elephants are very intelligent animals, and they quickly learn to overcome such obstacles. So they are more intelligent than us. And see, hunger is the best motivation. There is hunger inside. They need to go. They will go. Otherwise, they will starve. So you cannot stop them. You should not stop them also. We don't want them to starve. And if we really want them to survive, we have to give them space. That is the thing.
Thank you. That was a very lucid explanation, Dr. Sharma. I think this webinar has been a very nice and good discussion, fantastic presentations out here. And I would like to thank each and every participant right here. We've actually gone way beyond what we thought it would be. It would be about 1 hour. Now it's going to be 2 hours and another 14 minutes. Another question has actually come in. I wish to know, how can we solve feed rejection in wild animals and birds after rescuing them? So this is another question.
So actually, just briefly, I will answer that.
Yeah.
Because immediately after rescue, the animals are very much stressed. So don't try to force any food. They can survive 2-3 days without food. Give them water and electrolyte and leave them alone. Try to reduce all sorts of stress, because plucking them out of the forest or some street, or they are very much in stress. So you don't expect them to eat. If they eat also, they will suffer from bloat or carbohydrate engorgement or acid indigestion. So to avoid that, you keep the feeding low. Just offer them some green grass or something. It's good if they take it, and don't bother if they do not take also. Once the stress will come down, they will eat. Of course, we will examine if they have some diseases, like they will be running high fever, there will be other symptoms of diseases, that we have to take care of that. But a healthy animal refusing food, we should not be bothered.
Excellent. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So, yeah, Dr. Lech wants to say something.
Yeah, very quickly, I don't want to prolong anymore. Dr. Kushal, thank you very much for a great and very informative presentation. I really enjoy it. I just want to add that the problem of tuberculosis in elephants is not only in India, it's also in US, and actually we get...
I know Susan Mikota is my good friend. So I know how since long time she has been working on tuberculosis. She has visited me several times. We work together. And I know that the problem of tuberculosis exists in elephants in US also, but it's much higher in India, like in some pockets, but not fortunately not in northeastern region.
Basically, I want to say that, regardless where you live, and want to show that this is global problem. This is not only India problem with elephants. Yeah. Basically, this interaction between people and elephants and the other susceptible animals. And just to summarize what I was saying before in my presentation also, that a lot of time when we care for animals and create sanctuary on the other good things, unfortunately, sometimes we do much more damage and wrong thing, not the good things. We're doing this not only for elephants, for animals, we're doing for ourselves. If we miss the opportunity to save the population, like wild elephants or the other wild animals, we lose something from general population, from human beings and for our generation to come. So that's always make me very concerned, and hopefully slowly, but we start to pay attention to it. Try not to lose in order to fix problem, which would usually human create problem like disease outbreak and so on. So that's my final comments, and I'm sorry I don't want to prolong anymore.
Well said. Well said.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Lake and Dr. Sharma and Munmun Madam also. Dr. Munmun Sharma is also perhaps in the screen, but I cannot look.
Please,
there you are, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks all of us for listening in. This is just the first in this series of presentations that we are trying to bring together veterinarians who are doing non-conventional jobs. There are other interesting things which we will try to bring forth. I think the learning from this presentation today was that we get only one expert on board and try to do a shorter, because then each one, today there were two stalwarts talking about two fantastically different topics, and maybe we'll have both of you back here together to talk about something more in more details. And thank you, everybody. I would like to put on record a few words of vote of thanks to All Creatures Great and Small, the NGO who inspired us to start off, and Dr. Surajit Nath. He is not, his videos might have been switched off. Dr. Surajit, he is the inspiration. He started it all. He had some discussions. There you are, Dr. Surajit. So thank you, Dr. Surajit, for bringing this idea together. It's a very, very innovative way of bringing together veterinarians all over the world. And I think we'll carry this forward. Thank you, Dr. Lek, Dr. Kupal Sharma sir, and Madam. And we've recorded all the questions that have come through. Dr. Surajit Nath will get back to on email on those questions which we have not been able to capture. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Minal, and thank you, Late. Thank you, Surajit.
Pleasure having you all. Honor listening to you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm leaving the meeting now.
Maybe see you next time. Okay.
For sure. Looking forward.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.